Chapter 22. After Hugh Mac left, Teal couldn't stand being cooped up in this room that wasn't his in a bed that was still too soft to ever be comfortable. Even the clothes he wore were branded with the Academy's logo, reminding him he was only playing dress-up for a fucked-up show of pageantry. He tore off the sleek Academy-approved pajamas and dug out his black basketball shorts and stiff jade blue gym shirt from Quetzalcoatl High from his duffel bag. Once again, Teal broke the rules and left the competitor's wing. He didn't care if he'd been banished to his room. There wasn't any other punishment Sunbearer Luna could hand out that was worse than being forced to compete in the trials. He climbed the steps to the top of Soul Temple. The observatory was empty except for the soul stone and the waiting altar. Without anyone else around, Teal realized the stone was giving off a soft humming sound as it rotated, small solar flames licking its sides. Up here, he could see all of Reino del Sol stretching out into the darkness around him. Lights blinked from far-off cities, the beams of the sunstones shining from their temple homes. Back home, there was too much light pollution to see the stars, but here they sparked brightly overhead. Teal plopped down on the edge of the observatory, his legs dangling over the side of the soul stone as the soul stone warmed his back. He faced a small beam of light farthest to the west that he knew was Quetzalcoatl Temple. Teal missed home. Felt like months since he left inside instead of days. Teal propped his elbows on his knees and scrubbed his hands over his face. "There you are," came a familiar voice. Teal jumped and turned to find Aurelio standing behind him. He wore the Academy shorts and a crop top that matched his uniform, his hair pulled back into a knot as always. The corner of his lip was tugged into a tired grin. "How'd you find me?" Teal asked, his wings tucked in tightly against his back. Aurelio lifted his shoulders in a small shrug. "There's only so many places to hide around here." Teal squinted up at him suspiciously. "Actually, the temple was pretty big." Aurelio sat down next to him with a heavy sigh. Teal liked how the soft parts of his stomach rolled when he was sitting. "I've been looking for a while," he admitted. "We were supposed to stay in our rooms for the rest of the night," Teal said. "Won't your mom be pissed at you if she finds out?" Aurelio shrugged. "She's usually mad at me, so I'm not sure it'd make much of a difference." Not sure what to say to that, Teal kept quiet. Sleepy soft warmth radiated from Aurelio, warming Teal in the cold night air. Next to Aurelio's bare, muscular thigh and deep brown skin, Teal looked comically pale and thin. "Which one's yours?" Aurelio asked, nodding out toward the city lights. Teal pointed to Quetzal's narrow beam. "What about you?" Aurelio leaned toward Teal, his shoulder pressing against his wing, and pointed in the opposite direction. San Fuego was closer and brighter, practically blazing as it shot up into the night sky. "Man, I wanted to see the rest of the city so bad," Teal said with a weak laugh. "And now?" Aurelio asked, his eyes still locked in the light of his city's sunstone. "Now I think you've got to beat out Desi to be Sunbearer," Teal said, nudging him with his elbow. "Then I can show you around Quetzalcoatl." Aurelio only hummed in response. For a little while they sat in the silence. Teal waited for Aurelio to say something, but his odd stillness made Teal wonder if maybe Aurelio was waiting for him to say something first. "Just be quiet," Teal told himself. "Don't ruin the moment." But he couldn't help it. "So, do you think I'm a liar too?" Aurelio's eyebrows creased. "What, for what happened at dinner?" Teal nodded. "No, I don't think you're lying. Something does seem off." Silence fell between them again. Teal didn't want to push it, didn't want to feel the harsh sting of Aurelio's disbelief on top of everyone else's, but he also felt, deep down in his chest, that Aurelio would actually listen. "You know, for a second I thought your sister was going to bash my skull in," Teal tried first chuckle. "For a second," Aurelio said, finally looking at him. "So did I. She's not like that, though," he added, dark eyebrows bunching. "Aristella's competitive, but she's not violent." "Guess I'll have to take your word for it," Teal mumbled under his breath. Aurelio nodded. "Yes, she's never done something like that before," he said, troubled. "She's been acting weird lately. Everyone has, to be honest." "Just as a third-party outsider," Teal said, pressing his fingers to his chest, "all the goals come off as very I'll do anything to win. We're competitive, sure, but even back at the Academy, it's more like friendly competition," Aurelio went on, idly toying with the strings of his hoodie. "We go hard, but then after we're still friends, still joking around." "You? Joke around?" Aurelio gave him a withering look. "I'm serious. Usually it's just head-to-head and there isn't all this sabotage and ruthlessness." "Maybe the stress of the trials is getting to us," Teal suggested with a shrug, trying to convince himself more than anything because the other option was too terrifying. The possibility of fame and glory or impending death doesn't exactly bring out the best in people. It certainly hadn't in him. "Maybe," Aurelio conceded after a long pause, but he didn't seem convinced. Aside from the obvious, there was something else that had happened in the fourth trial that was still bugging Teal. "Before your sister destroyed the Soulstone replica, she tried to get you to take it," Teal said. "Why didn't she just take it for herself?" Aurelio held his breath and tipped his head to one side. "It's complicated." "I've got the time," Teal told him. "Me and Aristella have always been really close." "Well, you are twins." Aurelio rolled his eyes. "It's more than that. We were mostly raised by our mortal dad because our mother was busy. I was so excited to start the Academy back then," he said with a weak laugh. A wistful grin rolled across Teal's lips. "I remember." All the nights Tio and Aurelio spent during holidays and events flooded Tio's head. How they pretended they were heroes, fighting off villains and monsters in order to protect the people of Seoul. Aurelio was always so excited, talking about what it would be like at the academy, the two of them together. But then I actually started school and was nothing like I thought it would be, Aurelio went on, frowning down at his hands in his lap. We didn't have our dad anymore. Our siblings were all busy being heroes, and the Lumbre priests weren't the warmest. Tio could easily recall. My mom kept impressing on us the importance of being a gold and how we should only be friends with other golds, but only the strongest ones. Aurelio turned to face him, and Tio caught himself holding his breath. Sorry for the way I treated you. Tio's stomach sank. Hot shame flooded his cheeks as his shoulders crept up to his ears. It's a shitty thing to do, Aurelio said, refusing to look away. You were so nice to me, the only person who tried to be my friend. I treated you so horribly, and I regret it every day. Aurelio's sincerity was unsettling, and the pain of Aurelio ditching him all those years ago still ached. He wasn't sure if he was ready to forgive Aurelio just yet. Aurelio gave him one more intent look and turned away, freeing Tio of his gaze. It's funny, he said with a short, mirthless laugh. I spent my whole childhood looking forward to joining the academy and training to be a hero. I was so desperate to get my mother's attention, but when I finally did, it was nothing like I expected. And there was no one I could talk to about it, no one who would understand, anyway, except Aristella. That's why I'm so close with my sister, Aurelio continued, his coppery gaze sliding to Tio. She's the only one I'm allowed to be close to. She's the only person I've ever really been able to rely on. It sounded so awful and isolating. My sister's always been very protective. Yeah, I've noticed, Tio grumbled, rubbing the lump on the back of his head. Aristella and I are supposed to be model students, model heroes, the best of the best, constantly in training, constantly in competition. Our whole lives it's been beaten to us that we need to be the best of the best, to be exceptional. And you've achieved that, haven't you? Tio asked. Nia says you and Aristella are the top-ranked students. Both of you were chosen to compete in the Sunbearer trials, he pointed out. If this was Aurelio's attempt to make Tio feel sympathetic, then he really didn't know his audience. What does that have to do with her smashing the Soul Stone? Aristella wanted me to take the Soul Stone because she wanted me to win the trial, Aurelio said. Obviously she wants one of you to win, Tio said, waiting for some kind of revelation. No, she wants me to win. So when I wouldn't take the Soul Stone, in a fairly poorly constructed plan, she decided if I wasn't going to take it, it'd be best if no one had it, to help me get into first. But now Desi's in first. Like I said, a very poorly constructed plan. Why does she want you to win so badly? So she can prove to her mom that I'm not a failure. He said it so plainly, at first Tio thought he heard him wrong. What? Tio said, a laugh jumping in his throat. How the hell could she think you were a failure? Surely this was some kind of joke. He was Aurelio, the golden boy. How could anyone accuse him of being anything less than perfect? I'm not fireproof. Aurelio turned to look at him, a crease between his brows like he wasn't sure how Tio was going to respond. And Tio didn't even know how to respond. What Aurelio said didn't make sense. Tio shook his head. But you're the son of Lumbre, he said. All children of Lumbre are fireproof. That's like your whole thing. Yeah, well, not me, Aurelio said gruffly, shifting uneasily where he sat. I can manipulate fire, but my skin isn't fireproof, he explained. My skin doesn't get damaged as quickly as a mortal's, but I can still feel it. Aurelio pulled up the sleeves of his hoodie, revealing the ever-present golden armbands. He filled it with the small claps of his left arm, and Tio's heart leapt into his chest. He wanted to reach out and tell him to stop. Whatever Aurelio was about to show him, Tio knew he wasn't ready to see. As long as I don't handle fire for too long, it doesn't injure my skin. With a small click, the armband opened up, revealing the marred skin beneath. Tio sucked in a breath between his teeth. Marbled scars encircled Aurelio's forearm. Some were darker brown, while others were bright red and shiny. Tio leaned forward. They wrapped around in shapes Tio recognized but couldn't quite put his finger on. It was a matter of getting used to it, Aurelio said, his voice quiet as they sat next to each other, heads bowed over his arm. He flexed his fingers and patches of scar tissue pulled taut over Russell. Resistance training, my mother called it, Aurelio murmured. A sudden coldness struck Tio in his core. He recognized the shapes now. Handprints, the same size but layered and in different stages of healing. Tio clenched his jaw. Angry heat flooded his veins. If there was ever reason to punch a god, this was it. Aurelio was sitting there quietly, eyes downcast and scars laid bare. Tio swallowed down the burning in his throat. He reached for Aurelio's arm but stopped himself short, fingers hovering. Does it hurt? He asked, barely above a whisper. The same bone-deep, tired smile curled Aurelio's lips. Every time. Tio thought about every time he'd seen Aurelio touch fire. The Gecko Library spitting fire on his hands. The wall of fire he'd thrown himself in front of to protect Tio. All of his people back in Quetzalcoatl when the terrible fire broke out in the Panadaria. Aurelio could feel all of it, but he still went running into the flames. Aristotle thinks all my problems will be solved if I become Sunbearer, he said, bringing Tio back to the matter at hand. With that title under my belt, maybe it would convince my mom to overlook my shortcomings. Shortcomings, Tio echoed with a bitter laugh. Aurelio was a picture-perfect god, modeled to be a hero from his haircut to the clothes he wore, even to his photo-ready persona. Aristotle was wrong to do what she did, destroying the stone or trying to bash my head in. Aurelio chose to ignore him. But I understand why. When it comes down to it, Aristotle is the most important thing to me, not titles. Aurelio locked the golden armband over her skin once again before looking up at Tio with a steady gaze. I would do anything for my sister, and she would do anything for me. I don't care about being named Sunbearer to impress my mother anymore. I just want both of us to make it through alive. Aurelio was worried about Aristella coming in last. They were both in similar situations, with people they cared about at the bottom of the rankings. But someone had to die. Not just anyone, someone they knew. He hated to admit it, but Tio had actually grown to like some of the Golds. They were funny and they were just kids like him, not the supervillains he built them up to be in his head. Desi and Marino had saved his ass during the trials more than once. Aristella and Estella sucked, sure, but not enough to warrant him murdering them. And if things continued the way they were now, it'd be Zio who was killed. Tio was sickened by himself. He'd wanted to win for all the wrong reasons, not for some noble cause, but because he wanted to feel worthy. But it wasn't too late. There was still time to fix it. Even if there was something interfering with the trials, manipulating people to act out and become violent, no one believed him, and he didn't know how to prove it. The reality of the situation was that they were stuck completing the final trial no matter what. So, regardless of whatever else was going on, he had to figure out how to get through it alive with Nia and Zio. I'll do whatever it takes to keep her safe, Aurelio told Tio, a fiery intensity behind his copper eyes. Tio let out a forced laugh. That's the fucked up part, isn't it? He said, looking back at the soul stone. What is? Aurelio asked, looking between Tio and the stone. The grin on Tio's lips was bitter. That someone still has to die. For a long moment, they were both silent. Aurelio lifted his arm, pointing to a cluster of stars above them. There they are, he said. The obsidians. Tio squinted. I was never good at identifying stars. They all look the same to me. It's not single stars, Aurelio explained, gesturing a little wider. They're constellations. You see that brighter cluster over to the left? That's the base of Chupacabra. And next to it, see that shape? Almost like an hourglass. Like chaos. Tio thought he could make them out now. What about Venganza? Aurelio's hand shifted to the right. There. See? Looks like a goat head with horns. That's where Sol trapped them all among the stars. So that's what we're fighting for, huh? Tio asked. He couldn't help the bitterness that crept into his voice. To keep away some big balls of light? But Aurelio shook his head. They're much worse than that. Silence fell between them again as they both gazed up into the night. Tio tried to imagine the Obsidians back before the war, when they were dioses as real as his mom or Luna. He couldn't picture it. The Obsidians were more like monsters in a scary story. I've been thinking about what you said the other night, Aurelio murmured. I say a lot of stuff, Tio said quietly. You have to be more specific. About how, if being sacrificed is such an honor, then it should be the winner of the trials. Tio looked over at him, surprised. Do you think I'm right? Aurelio shook his head, eyes heavy-lidded as he looked out across the sprawling darkness. No. He let out a long sigh. But I don't think you're wrong, either. Better than nothing, Tio joked, but there was a heavy weight draped across both of them. I don't... Aurelio paused, his lips pinched together. Whatever he was trying to say, Tio could see was difficult to express. I don't know if I could do it. Tio quirked an eyebrow. Make the sacrifice, Aurelio said. Be Sunbearer. Even if I didn't know the person who had to die, even though it has to be done, I don't know that I could take someone's life. Tentatively, Tio leaned his shoulder against Aurelio's. He tensed but didn't pull away. I hope you don't have to, Tio said quietly. Aurelio's shoulder slumped and he leaned into Tio, just a touch. The warmth of his skin spread through Tio's side. They fell into silence, staring up at the soul stone as it burned. Chapter 23. The fifth trial wasn't until later that night. There was a lot of time to kill during the day, too much for Tio's comfort. Everyone was restless and unusually quiet. He was especially worried about Zio, who had dark circles under his eyes and refused to eat until Tio and Nia gently bullied him into getting down some bread and cheese. At one point, Tio, Zio, and Nia were in the common room playing Loteria. When he looked up, he realized most of the Golds were there too. Marino, Desi, Otzi, and Xochi were half-heartedly playing pool, and someone said Estella had retreated to the training room. They weren't chattering and laughing like they usually did. Even Desi, who was always smiling and so animated, propped himself up on his pool cue like he might fall asleep standing up at any minute. Meanwhile, Aurelio and Aristella sat side by side on one of the couches that faced the large windows. They kept to themselves, but more than once Aurelio caught Tio's eye as he watched them from across the room. The city below buzzed with activities, priests prepared for the night's festivities. The fifth and final trial began after sunset, and the Sunbearer ceremony would happen at midnight. No. They're doing it right after oh my. They're doing it right after the trial? Oh my god. Sorry, okay. As excitement thrums through Soul Temple, the competitors silently ate lunch. Teal wondered if they were all thinking the same thing, that in less than 12 hours, one of them would be named the Sunbearer, and one of them would be dead. Despite his restlessness, Teal was still surprised when the Soul Priest came to gather them and he learned that the final trial would not take place in an arena at Soul Temple. Instead, they would be traveling to a different, undisclosed location. In their uniforms, they followed Luna back to the docks. Soul Priest paused in their preparations to cheer and wave at the competitors. Teal's breathing was loud in his own ears as he obediently walked the dirt paths until they were back by the docks. Instead of the large boat they'd grown accustomed to, a fleet of Trajaneros waited for them. The competitors' priests were on their boats, a sea of colorful robes. Teal tried to spot the brilliant green and blue of the Quetzal, desperately searching for Humac's face, but the small jade Trajanero was at the very back. Luna instructed them to board the lead boat covered in the golden ornaments of Soul. The tree was laden with fruits, meats, and any freshly squeezed juice they could want. But when they sat down, no one touched it. When they passed the waterfalls, Teal had the brief, delirious hope that maybe they were going home to Quetzal, but that was quickly dashed when their Trajanera headed south. Teal had never traveled through these canals, and since he was shit at geography, he had no idea which unfamiliar cities their journey would take them through. For each city they traveled through, people stood along canals and over bridges, cheering and celebrating as they passed. Gritos cut through the air, not even Aristella waved. Teal wondered if these people understood what they were cheering for. This wasn't a silly parade celebrating a fun holiday. It was a funeral procession. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Nia's nerves finally kicked in. She started talking a mile a minute about absolutely nothing. No one said anything, instead letting Nia continue having conversations with herself for the rest of the trip. Even that was better than the heavy silence. They traveled through one of the outermost cities as the sun set on its final day before being renewed. It was a small and run-down city. Many of the buildings along the canal sat crooked with boarded-up windows. The farther they went, the more alert the gulls became. Desi sat up straighter, eyes glued past the head of the boat. Sel's heavy brow pulled down over their jaguar eyes. Suddenly, Nia stopped talking. The Trajanera had slowed to a stop at a rickety old dock. They were quite a ways from the nearest house, and when Teal looked at what lay ahead, he at first only saw pitch-black night. But his eyes quickly adjusted, and when he looked up, he realized it was a massive dark tree stretching far into the sky above. "They're not serious," Xochi sighed and said sharply, making Teal jump. Her hair whipped back and forth as she looked between the rest of the table and the trees. "They can't be serious!" Over the sound of his suddenly thundering heart, short, shaky breaths caught Teal's attention. He realized Teal's dark eyes were huge as he stared unblinkingly at the looming jungle. Aristella latched onto Aurelio's arm as she stared ahead at the jungle. Aurelio's mouth thinned to a hard line, his nostrils flaring. For once in her life, Nia was speechless. "Where are we?" Teal demanded, voice tight as adrenaline flooded his veins. Aurelio was the one to answer. "Los Restos." Every bit of warmth left in Teal's body was swallowed by icy fear. From what Teal could remember from school, Los Restos was the wild southern jungle where the abandoned ruins of the betrayer gods now lay beyond the reach of Soul. After Venganza, Chupacabra, and Chaos were locked up in their celestial prisons, the gods destroyed their cities and temples. Over time, nature had reclaimed the ruins, and now dangerous animals and monsters roamed freely. Sometimes they broke into the borders of Reino del Sol, but such events were few and far between, and swiftly handled by the heroes. It was eerie, seeing how the jungle started where the outskirts of the city ended. Almost like an invisible barrier held the creeping roots and ferns back. It started to rain, not the soft, warm kind that Teal was used to during hurricane season, but the sharp, icy cold kind that stung when it hit his skin. In the distance, he could hear a low growl of thunder as they followed Luna to the edge of the jungle. The silvery stars of her dress and streaks of her hair caught what little light they had to illuminate the way. Waiting for them were 10 raised wooden paths coated thickly with moss. They climbed rickety rope ladders up to platforms 20 or so feet above the ground. Each one was built with crisscrossing logs, and each platform extended outward, disappearing into the dense, dark forest before them. For once, Phantasma's presence didn't give Teal comfort. Instead, she was an ominous reminder of the fate that awaited whoever ranked last. "This trial requires you to follow a single path, but it is not a race," Dios Luna said and signed as a priest held an umbrella over her. Her voice sounded strained and distant. "The deeper you get into the jungle, the stranger, more dangerous things you may see, and your paths will start to converge and cut into one another. The finish point of this trial is at the convergence of all paths. There will be a large platform with Soul's glyph waiting for you. Once you cross the finish line, you may not go back." Teal tried to listen, but a deep quivering had taken hold of his spine, making it hard to concentrate. All I could think about was what if they were all split up. He, Zio, and Nia would somehow have to find another. "There are no rules for this trial. You must simply reach the end," Luna announced in a wavering voice. Tio had seen her be stoic and kind, and even harsh, but he never once seen the Dioso look frightened. It sent goosebumps skittering down his arms. Wait a second. If it's not a race, then how do you determine who wins? It has to be who gets there first. But if it's not a race, then why does it matter? The forests of Los Restos have been corrupted by the ancient power of the Obsidians, and their influence remains. Soul's light cannot reach you under the dark crowns of these trees. You are on your own, and you will be judged on how well you defend yourselves against the remnants of the Obsidian's power. We simply cannot know what obstacles lay ahead for you. You may use any means necessary to protect yourself. The only stipulation is that if you fall off the path, you won't be allowed to continue and your light will go out. Light? So, that's how? By how well they fight? All at once, their uniforms lit up. The honeycomb webbing, stitching, and mesh panels were all illuminated with warm golden light, except for Tio's and Zio's, which glowed brilliant blue-green. Diosa Luna's face faltered, just for a moment. She was looking at Zio with concern. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then paused. Her eyes broke away from him and scanned the rest of the competitors. When a silvery gaze met Tio's, she closed her mouth, and her expression hardened back into the still, round mask he was used to, though something about the side of her jaw was too tight. Competitors will be taken to their starting points, and then we will begin, Diosa Luna instructed, and a line of soul priests stepped forward to escort them. Even after Tio reached the top of the platform, the rain continued to pour. Tio trekked with his friends ended up, which was easy to do in the dark with their illuminated uniforms. Tio tried to ignore the shivers that kept sending his wings fluttering to shake the water from his feathers. 20 feet up had seemed a lot lower when he was on the ground. The knotty wood beneath him was warped and slippery, but there was no railing or edge, just wet tree bark and moss and the inky blackness below him. The familiar transparent barrier made of golden light separated him from the rest of the path, but beyond it, he could see the logs disappear into the depths of the jungle. "Competitors, on your marks," Luna's voice boomed. Tio returned to Zio and flashed him a thumbs up. Zio returned it with a curt but shaky nod. Mirach's cornet sounded, and Tio's watch shook at the same time the barrier disappeared. As soon as Tio ran past the tree line, everything plunged into blackness, his suit the only source of light. The ray's golden path twisted left and right, making it impossible to see very far ahead. They were beneath the jungle canopy, which meant the heavy foliage blocked out the stars. The trees stood close together, leaning against one another, and branches tangling together like fingers. Any hopes Tio had of using his wings to fly up and look for his friends were quickly dashed. The jungle was so densely packed that there was no way Tio could fly more than 15 feet in the air without getting tangled up. Even then, his wings were sore from overuse, just like Aurelio had warned him, and Aristella's needs pinning them hadn't helped. So it was back to old-school running, and it was terrible. Immediately, Tio got a stitch in his side, and every footfall jarred his aching shoulders. He stuck to the center of the path because if he got too close to the edge, the dark jungle below him gave him vertigo. The canopy blocked out the direct rainfall, but the water also gathered on fronds and poured down on him in thick streams. In the dark, it was impossible to see wayward vines and branches protruding from the jungle, and Tio had to continuously catch his balance, or risk face-planting on the jungle floor. It may have been wiser to take the path slow, to consider every step, but the sudden, oppressive feeling of loneliness in the dark trees urged him to go faster until he found his friends. After what felt like ages, his path met with the one to his right. Tio slowed to a jog, straining his ears and eyes for anyone else. He heard movement within the trees, something heavy and inhuman. The icy drums pelted his skin and dipped into his eyes. "Zio!" he shouted, hoping maybe they could find each other that way. He tried 3 more times, but the sound of rain crashing the leaves made it impossible to hear anything else. He didn't understand how it could be raining like this. When Tio shaded his eyes with his hand and looked up, he swore it looked like rain clouds had gathered under the protective layer of the canopy. Before he could make sense of it, Tio's scalp tingled and a strange metallic taste hit his tongue. Light exploded at his feet a half-second before a loud crack split through Tio's ears. Knocked onto his side, Tio quickly scrambled away from the now scorched and steaming log. When he looked up, he found Otzi snuck up behind him. She walked forward with determined strides, her hands twisting as thick rain clouds swirled obediently overhead. Something was off about the way she carried them. She was about to call out when her mouth twisted into a very un-Otzi smirk. She held out her arm, poised to strike. "Shit, shit, shit!" He rushed to get to his feet, shoes sliding out from under him. Otzi reached out and a bolt of lightning appeared, quivering between her hands. Tio managed to throw himself out of the way before she threw it like a spear. It struck the path where he'd just been, splintering the log. Silvery light illuminated Otzi's frustrated face. With an angry shout, she chucked another lightning bolt. Tio leapt, hot pain shooting through her shoulders as his wings got him over the bolt of lightning. It crashed uselessly into a tree. "Come on, Tio!" she goaded. "Don't you remember the first trial when I shot you out of the sky? Don't you want to get me back?" There was something strange about her. He didn't know Otzi all that well, but in the short time they'd been traveling together, she'd never been so antagonistic. Her focus was always intense but quiet. "Maybe you'd rather fight me," Otzi said, but it wasn't Otzi anymore. The fish's features twisted and curved as a figure before Teal grew. Suddenly, it was Acel standing before him, pointed teeth flashing. "Let's go, bird boy!" The fake Acel bounded forward, claws out. Teal stumbled back, his ass slamming hard against the logs beneath him. Acel lunged again, and Teal rolled. Thinking fast, he kicked his leg out and, like Aurelio had done to him, swept Acel's legs out from under them. "That's all you got, Jade?" Acel taunted as they jumped to their feet. Though Teal had to admit it was a passable impression. This time, when they swung, their fists collided with Teal's jaw. Teal's wings flailed as he was knocked down to his side. He tasted blood in his mouth, but he was still standing. "That's all you got?" he asked, spitting Jade blood onto the ground as he struggled back onto his feet. Acel's lips peeled back unnaturally from their teeth in a razor-sharp smile. "I could do this all day." He shifted again, this time growing almost double in size. Acel's smug expression melted into the angry sneer of Dioso Lumbre. "You continue to be a disappointment," she said in a perfect imitation of the Dioso's voice. Anger bubbled in his stomach. Lumbre's hands ignited into balls of flame. There was no way this was the real goddess. This is clearly one of the tricks of Los Restos. Lumbre flung her first fireball at his face. Teal swore his eyebrows singed off as he just barely dodged to safety. It wasn't the real Dioso Lumbre, but that was definitely real fire. They also laughed, something Teal couldn't recall ever hearing the real Lumbre do. It was a cruel sound. "Pitiful little Jade. I'll admit, I didn't think you'd make it this far. I was looking forward to watching my daughter destroy you." She threw another blast of fire in Teal's direction. Sending a prayer to Sol, his mom, and any god that would listen, he clapped his wings together in front of him. The gust of wind he created was powerful enough to throw the flames back, but he wasn't sure he'd be able to pull that off a second time. He had to get close, to take Lumbre out before she made more fire. Using his wings again for an extra boost, Teal surged forward with his arms up. His elbow collided with the Diosa's nose, knocking her back. A thin stream of blood trailed down Lumbre's face when she looked up at him, but she was smiling. Her tongue peeked out of the corner of her mouth, licking the black ichor. "It's sad that that's the best you can do." "Shut up!" Teal shouted. He charged forward again, this time aiming for the goddess's big, stupid mouth. Lumbre only laughed as he threw punch after punch, not even bothering to dodge out of the way. What game was it playing? It could have knocked him off the logs easily with Otzi's lightning, or maimed him with Acel's claws. And Teal knew he didn't stand a chance against the real Lumbre. It was almost like he was throwing the fight, letting him get the hits in. "There are no rules for this trial," Luna had said. "You must simply reach the end." How much time had he wasted fighting this thing? There was no way he could defeat it. No matter how hard he hit, it always got back up, seemingly unfazed. The fight would never end. Teal tried to think. What would Neo do? Or Aurelio? Did the Academy even bother giving lessons on fights you couldn't win? Fights you can't win. Teal jolted with realization. He let his fists fall to his sides. Lumbre took the opportunity to shove him back, but she didn't even try to throw more fire. Teal grinned. This was just like his favorite video game. Sometimes, to escape an enemy he couldn't beat, all he had to do was run out of range. And so, Teal ran. What is this, Temple Run? Lumbre didn't even bother running after him as he doubled back the way he'd come. All she did was shout, "Weak! Someone as cowardly as you would never be worthy of my son!" Definitely not Lumbre, but just as bitchy. He'd have to find another way forward. There had to be other paths. Everyone had run off in opposite directions, but their platforms had to converge at some point. Teal pressed on. The only good thing about having to run so much was that he wasn't cold anymore. Yeah, maybe his exposed arms were numb at this point, but his core was warm and that kept him from shivering. After rounding a couple more corners without incident, he almost didn't notice when the paths converged again. This time, there was already someone waiting up ahead. Marino was on his knees at the edge of the platform, reaching down precariously into the darkness. He must have heard Teal's approach because his head snapped up with a panicked expression. "Help me!" Marino demanded, arms continuing to stretch into the menacing dark. "We have to help him!" Teal stepped forward, unsure what to expect, but all he saw was darkness. "There's nothing there!" "Desi!" Marino screamed, ignoring him as he turned away again. His hands moved quickly as he signed something into the darkness. "He won't take my hand," Marino said, voice quaking. "Help me reach him!" Marino's torso was practically over the ledge, and he had no idea he was grasping at nothing. Teal grabbed his shoulder, trying to pull him back. "Desi isn't there, Marino!" He huffed with the effort, trying to haul the other boy's weight, but he refused to budge. "It's fucking Los Restos messing with us!" Marino didn't want to budge. He kicked out, landing his foot right in Teal's stomach, but at least Teal had managed to pull him back from falling and getting eliminated. Another figure entered the clearing and Teal's stomach dropped, anticipating another trick. To his surprise, this time he did see Desi. The boy was shaking his head as if trying to get rid of a vision before he noticed Marino and Teal. Marino was already scrambling back to the edge. "Marino, look!" Teal yelled, grabbing his leg. Upon seeing this, Desi's expression hardened, locking in on Teal. Finally, Marino glanced back. When he saw Desi, the real Desi, his face crumpled in relief. He ran over and fell against Desi's chest, grabbing him as if to make sure he was really there, not dangling over the edge about to be lost forever. Startled, Desi held him tight and pulled him away, putting himself between Tio and Marino. Tio's heart sank. Everyone had people they wanted to protect. He needed to find Zio. He had no idea what terrible illusions the younger boy had encountered, and he couldn't stand the thought of facing him alone. Finally, Marino and Desi looked at Tio. I don't understand. I saw Desi hanging from the edge, Marino said inside. Desi's eyes bulged, quickly looking between Marino and Tio. I've been seeing people too, Tio said as he tried to catch his breath. Trying to keep a goal from throwing himself over a ledge was a lot harder than it looked. It's the temptations Luna warned us about. Whatever's still in this place, it's creating illusions to trick us. Marino nodded sullenly, his hands moving as he relayed Tio's revelation to Desi. A look of understanding spread across his face as his hands started moving too. He saw things too, Marino translated. The boys looked at each other with such sadness and relief that Tio felt like he was intruding. Tio looked away, surveying his options. There was one path that continued on into the jungle, and two led back toward the starting points. His heart thudded as he tried to figure out what to do. Shouldn't he have seen some sign of Zio by now? If he continued forward, he ran the risk of leaving Zio behind. But if he went back to look for him, Zio could be up ahead and run into danger alone. He didn't have the luxury of time to debate, so Tio followed his gut. Good luck, he said to Marino and Desi before he turned around and headed back down the path Desi had taken. Tio ran as fast as he could, hoping he hadn't made the completely wrong choice and wasn't doubling back for no reason. His chest heaved as he sucked in rainwater and salty sweat. This path was exactly the same as the one he started on, but this time he was able to ignore the familiar smells and whispers that tried to distract him from his mission. He raced as quickly as he could around the twisting bends, growing more unsure the farther he went. Son of a bitch! A familiar voice rang out. He skidded to a stop, stunned. Nia? He called out. Tio? Are you alright? Yeah, I'm just kind of freaked out. Her voice echoed, bouncing between the giant trees. He followed it down another fork in the path, finally coming upon Nia standing in the middle of a platform. When she saw him, her eyes lit up. Tio! She moved forward to hug him, but Tio took a step back. Say something that only Tio would know, he demanded. The words felt ridiculous leaving his mouth. It was something he would have seen in a movie, but he didn't know how else to be sure it was really his best friend. What? She asked, confusion furrowing her brow, kneeling on the verge of tears. Tell me something that only Nia would know, Tio said, to prove it's really you. When we were 10, you ate a roly-poly at the Midsummer Festival and made me lie about it, she immediately listed, eyes shaking and eyes glistening. When we were 13, you got that horrible haircut and made me edit all your Instagraphia posts for a month until it grew back in. When we were 15 at the... Okay, Tio shouted back, cheeks burning. Will you keep it down? Do you believe it's really me? She asked, sniffling as she rubbed her nose off on the back of her hand. It better be, otherwise the real Nia is going to have to answer for sharing all the most embarrassing moments of my tween years on television. Nia threw herself at Tio, capturing him in a back-breaking hug. It was a relief to be with Nia, but it was impossible to feel too at ease in this jungle. Have you been hearing things? Nia asked, slowly composing herself. Tio nodded. Seeing things, too. People. He shuddered. Dios alumbre. Gross. He nodded again. How are you doing? I don't like being this high up. I like having my feet on solid ground, Leah lamented, voice tight. Have you seen Zio? Tio asked, turning in a slow circle as he tried to get his bearings. I haven't seen shit, she replied. It's dark as hell in here. Tio cursed under his breath. He was feeling Zio already. Am I afraid of heights? We need to find him, Tio announced. I've been backtracking in case he's behind us. Nia nodded firmly and fell on beside him as they continued back down the path. Hundreds of terrible scenarios flashed through Tio's head, distracting him enough that when they rounded the next bend of the path, he barreled straight into someone. Tio clumsily tried to get back on his feet as quick as he could. He turned, ready to fight off whatever illusion he just careened into. Zio! He practically cried in relief. The younger boy was sitting on the wet log path. The illuminated lining of the hood pulled over his head revealed Zio's wide-eyed surprise. What are you doing here? He asked, voice pitching as he shook his head in disbelief. Looking for you! Nia rushed forward and dragged him to his feet. We thought something might have happened to you! Tio looked at the boy closely. Nia, how do we know it's really him? Zio's expression filled with confusion. Of course it's him! Look how sad he is! She pointed out. An illusion wouldn't just sit here looking helpless. He didn't know how to argue with that. What happened to you? Tio asked. I got lost, Zio stammered, flush blooming in his cheeks. It's so dark out here. I ran as fast as I could. Bad luck really did follow him around. Doesn't matter now. We found you, Tio said, waving him off. Come on, we need to hurry. This place is full of illusions, so don't trust everything you see or hear. I've already run into a few golds, so we've got a lot of time to make up. Zio nodded jerkily and did as he was told. He kept up, but Tio could hear his ragged breaths over their pounding feet. They adjusted their speed to keep up with what Zio could manage. They hit the first conversions, but by the time they hit the second, the rain had lightened to a drizzle. As they came down another twist, their path joined with another on the left up ahead. Teal had a brief moment of relief that finally they were getting somewhere when two figures in gold suits emerged in front of them from the left past. Aristella and Aurelio. Immediately, Teal snatched the back of Zio's jacket, dragging him to a stop. Nia stopped with them. They crouched, ready to fight or something, but the twins didn't even glance back. They looked a little worse for wear. Aristella's hair was out of its usual ponytail, flying behind her, but he couldn't be certain, but Aurelio looked like he was running with a slight limp. Whatever, or whoever, had held them up hadn't been good news. Teal nudged Zio forward. "Quick, go, go, go!" he said in a harsh whisper, not wanting to draw the twins' attention. Hopefully they'd be too focused on finishing their challenge to look back. Aurelio and Aristella slowly pulled ahead, even with Aurelio's possible injury. Before long, Teal could hear something up ahead. The path straightened out. Snatches of bright light sparked through the tunnel of tangled jungle. Suddenly, Teal could actually see the foliage around him, and it was terrifying. Gnarled black branches grew all around, sharp edges and obsidian crystals glinting dangerously. Aurelio and Aristella ran faster, long shadows trailing behind them. A noise grew louder, from faint murmuring to the loud chatter of crowds. "I think we're almost at the end," Teal told Zio, his arms and legs tingling with exhaustion. Zio only nodded in response. All at once, the path opened up into one wide platform just outside the tree line. Aurelio and Aristella ran out first and were met with an explosion of loud applause, momentarily startling them into stillness. When Teal and Zio hit the platform, the crowd's clamor slammed into an abrupt, unnatural stop. Huge stands had been erected below and around the platform, packed tight with cheering priests and semi-diosis. Sol's glyph stood in the center of the platform on a raised dais. A golden barrier like the one from the start of the trial surrounded the glyph. That must have been the finish point. Sol and Desi stood inside the barrier, waiting. Teal blinked and rubbed his eyes, hoping it was real. As the three of them approached the center of the platform, the crowd roared to life again. Aurelio and Aristella looked back, finally spotting Teal, Nia, and Zio. He could have sworn he saw Aurelio's mouth start to quirk to a grin, but then he turned away and kept running. Aristella's gaze lingered longer, knocking her off pace a little as they neared the finish point. There was a strange look on her face, but she snapped out of it when Aurelio turned and said something to her. The sound of the crowd changed, warbling and growing higher and higher pitched. Aristella shook her head and chased after him. Then the lights shut off and they were plunged into blackness. Teal could hardly see where his feet were landing, but it didn't matter. He could see their destination. Aurelio and Aristella were only a few yards away from the finish, outlined by the dull glow of the glyph. The twins were going to beat them, but at least Teal knew he and his friends were going to complete the trial without getting disqualified. They had to count for something in the rankings. It had to. "Come on, Zio," he urged, tugging on his sleeve. "We're almost there." The barrier gleamed with golden light as Aurelio ran through. Estella and Desi greeted him with enthusiasm and claps on the back. Teal saw the gleaming, brilliant smile on Aurelio's face for a short, sweet moment. Then his smile froze in place. His eyebrows bunched. The sounds around them crackled back into reality, taking on the roaring cheers of the audience before melting into static, then eerie silence. The lights returned, so bright and searing that Teal's hand shot out to shield his eyes, slowing his steps. Aristella hadn't followed her brother through. She stood a few feet from the final checkpoint, her back to Teal. Aurelio looked at his sister, and through the shimmering golden wall, Teal saw his lips move but couldn't hear what he was saying. Aristella ignored him. Instead, she turned around. All of Aristella's attention locked on Teal and Zio. She stared at them, lips parted and head tilted to the side like she was listening for something. A heavy weight dropped into the pits of Teal's stomach. Aristella closed her eyes and took a slow, deep breath. "Wait!" Teal shot out his arm, forcing Zio to slow down. Zio looked up at him, confused. "What? What's wrong?" When Aristella opened her eyes, they were black as coals, the skin around them darkened and webbed with black veins. Her nostrils fled and wet pieces of hair stuck to her cheeks. Her lips curled back over her perfect white teeth. It was happening again. This time, Teal knew he wasn't imagining it. Past her shoulder, Aurelio frantically looked between his sister and Teal. He pounded his fist on the barrier, producing little more than a dull thud. His mouth moved silently again. "Aristella." But Aristella didn't listen. Her skin flushed red and she thrust her hands out at her sides. Fire roared to life in her palms. How was this happening now? It was almost over. They were almost done. "Run!" Teal grabbed Zio and roughly shoved him out of the way. The light cut out around them once again. A ball of fire illuminated the darkness, exploding between them. Aristella charged at Teal, ruthlessly throwing fire. He did his best to evade by spinning and dodging, but she was relentless. Gusts of heat prickled his skin as he tried to outrun her attacks, one after the other. His body was already exhausted and every muscle screamed, but he couldn't stop. He couldn't even think past yelling at himself to move faster, stay on his feet and keep her away from Zio. But in the darkness, he wasn't even sure where Zio was. There were too many sights and sounds and things trying to kill him. Earlier trials had been confusing, but this was a whole other beast. It was pure chaos. Aristella only grew more ferocious, grunting and seething as she threw volley after volley at Teal. A gust of wind from Teal's wings sent her one of her fireballs careening on a curved path. It connected with one of the horizontal logs laid across the platform, the fire crackling as it took hold on the wood. Teal looked back at Aristella. The skin around her eyes was bruised and sunken, the dark veins spreading across her face. She opened her mouth to speak, but was cut off when the arena was bathed in obsidian darkness again. This time, the roaring sound of the crowd was distorted into a low, slow warbling that only made Teal's pulse beat faster. He didn't have time to understand what was going on. All he could do was run. What Teal lacked in strength, he made up for in speed. His legs were wobbly, barely propelling him forward, but he knew if he fell, it'd be over. Aristella must have been feeling it too. As Teal fainted to her right, Aristella stumbled. A shout tore out of her, loud even above the bellowing crowd. Teal looked back over her shoulder. She kicked her leg straight up. For a moment she looked like a ballet dancer, leg held high and foot perfectly pointed, before she struck her foot to the ground. A crescent of flames fanned out with a whoosh, scorching the darkness and heading straight for Teal. With every ounce of energy Teal had left, he pitched forward, jumped, and thrust his wings downward. Her flames took hold with an unnatural quickness, blackening a large swath of the wooden platform. Teal shot into the air, and the fire washed over the logs below him like a wave, singeing off bark. When he tried to flap his wings to get higher, pain tore through his shoulders. His wings buckled, and he crashed back onto the platform. He rolled a few times, dangerously close to the edge. As he regained balance on his hands and knees, the sound melted into a low, thrumming buzz. It pounded in a steady rhythm, and the lights around them flickered in time. Teal desperately scrambled to get back onto his feet, but the roll was flashing in and out of his sight before he couldn't get his legs to work. Aristella was quick, but beneath the now strobing lights, Teal saw her move in slow motion. Aristella closed in on him, steam bellowing off her skin. She raised both her hands over her head. A ball of fire ignited between them. The sound of the crowd cut off once more, but the flickering lights remained. Teal's eyes widened. His pulse raced and his lungs burned. "This is for my brother!" she snarled. A strangled shout lodged in Teal's throat. He threw his arms over his head, waiting to be hit with excruciating pain. "Get away from him!" A silver chain twisted around Aristella's wrist, binding them over her head. There was only a split second when confusion split through her rage before Aristella was yanked off her feet and flung to the side. Nia appeared next to Teal, the silver chain held in her fist. She turned to Teal, standing over him, muscles bulging under her lustrous skin. "Did she get you?" Nia asked, her brow wrinkled as she frantically looked him over. "Not yet," Teal croaked out, so happy to see her that he was on the verge of tears. "We need to get to the finish," Nia said, grabbing his arms and practically lifting him off the ground as she pulled him to his feet. "Where's Zio?" he asked, adrenaline still rushing through him. Movement at the corner of his eye caught Teal's attention. "Watch it!" Nia dodged him out of the way as another ball of fire soared past, crashing into the stands behind them. Now something wasn't adding up. Aristella had been aggressive during the other trials, but this was on a whole other level. This was vicious and unrelenting, with no regard for others' safety. Regardless of how much she hated Teal, didn't add up to the picture Aurelia painted of his sister at all. More than that, she was frenzied, like she couldn't control herself, and the flickering lights only made it harder to predict her movements. Behind her, more of the logs that made up the platform had turned to a deep black. They didn't look burnt and ashen, but glistened wetly. Something about this wasn't right, but with the pulsing lights and distorted screams of the crowd, it was hard to get his head straight. Aristella was back on her feet with renewed vigor. In one burst, her entire body became engulfed in flame. She drew in a deep breath and splayed hands on either side of her face as she puffed out her chest. "Get down!" Nia bellowed above the garbled sounds around them, dragging Teal back down to his knees. A huge, round shield made of gold appeared on Nia's arm, protecting herself and Teal just as Aristella reared back to blow a stream of fire at them. Teal crouched behind Nia as the crowd sprayed against the shield. The fire sprayed against the shield. Flames licked the edge of the shield, reaching for them. Obsidian logs sizzled and popped. Nia held tight, but the gold started to glisten and melt, unable to stand up to the intense heat. Just when Teal thought they'd both be doused in liquid gold, Aristella ran out of breath. In the time it took her to draw on a new one, Nia charged forward. Like a human battering ram, Nia slammed her shield into Aristella, sending her flying back. "Holy shit!" Teal panted, struggling to get back on his feet. Did you know she could do that?" "Do what? Be a douchebag?" "Yeah, duh." "No, become a human fireball." Nia wiped the sweat from her brow. "I forgot." "You forgot? Why didn't she come after us?" Nia asked, brows furrowing. Aristella wasn't looking at them anymore. Her gaze was locked on Zio, who was hovering at the edge of the platform. "Zio!" Teal shouted. Aristella looked at Teal. In between bright flashes of light, a smirk curled her lips. "Run!" Teal and Nia shouted at Zio. He ran across a log that had been blackened by one of Aristella's fireballs. As though it was expecting him, the log just disappeared at his touch. Zio yanked his foot out of the gaping hole, but as he continued toward the center of the platform, Aristella ran after him, with chunks of the platform blackening and disappearing in her wake. Cautiously, Teal spread his wings, ignoring the sharp ache it caused, and relaxed them. He tried to survey the ruined platform to find a path, but the flashing lights and trembling debris made his eyes ache. There were more missing logs than remaining ones now, and it seemed like any step would bring the platform down around them. Aristella kept moving, single-minded, leaping over logs as she went, creating huge holes opening the jungle far below and sending more long sections of logs askew. She danced around Zio, circling and cutting him off like a predator toying with its prey. Aristella! The shout came from behind them, hoarse and strangely muffled. Aurelio stood with his body pressed flat against the invisible barrier, beating his fists against it and shouting more words that Teal couldn't make out. A crack of splintering wood sounded. The platform was crumbling around them. Teal turned back to Aristella just in time to see a log fall, the opposite end slamming up between her legs, taking her with it as the far end raised in the air. She grappled for a solid grip on the wood, barely hanging on. Something changed in Aristella's eyes. The angry snarl on her face flashed surprise. The fire engulfing her went out. The angry bruising and black veins were gone, leaving nothing but fear in her amber eyes. For the first time since they came upon her on the platform, it was as if she was finally seeing the scene clearly. "Relio!" she cried, but it was too late. Her brother couldn't save her. Aristella scrambled to hang on, but her fingers slipped uselessly over the smooth, shivering black log. She lost her grip and fell without another sound. No one could do anything but watch as the golden light of her suit plummeted, faded, and blinked out. Oh no! That's why she's in last place. I will say that I looked ahead at the markings on the book, because they have markings on the book. It's actually pretty cool. Aristella's in last and she fell, and that's why she's in last place. Oh my god! Okay. I'm good. Tio desperately searched the rubble and smoke for Zio. He clung to the top of a log that was swaying back and forth, its balance at the other end precarious. It could turn over at any moment, or Zio could lose his grip. It was too far for him to jump. If he fell, he could land in one of the jagged holes across the platform, or a blazing fire, or straight over the edge. But his uniform was still lit up. He hadn't lost the trial yet. And Tio had wings. Without the jungle canopy overhead, he could use them. With no time to second guess, Tio launched himself into the air. He knew it was going to hurt, but Tio realized that this wasn't going to work at all. The very flap of his wings, Tio wasn't sure he'd be able to do it again. Fireworks of pain shot across his back and deepened his shoulders. No, he could do it. He had to do it. He had to make it to Zio. 1 foot higher in the air, and then another. "Come on," he said, holding his arms out to Zio. Zio shook his head, tightening his hold on the log. "I'll fall!" Tio bit back a groan of frustration. He was bigger and stronger than Zio. He could get him. He could do it. Tio grabbed him around the waist and pulled, using the force of his flapping wings. And then they were falling together. Tio threw out his wings to slow the fall and snagged the log again in his free arm, dangling with Zio in the other. His wings were useless now, stripped of every ounce of strength. Fire ate up the log, getting closer. The wood groaned and cracked. Feral heat lit at Tio's fingertips. What could he do? How could they get out of this? "Tio!" Nia shouted, and he realized he couldn't get out of this, but his friends could. "Trust me, okay?" Tio said. "No!" Zio said, arms pinwheeling to grab hold of something. There was no time to talk him into it. Tio loosened his grip on Zio. As Zio dropped, Tio kept his hand against Zio's body, feeling it pass over his chest, his armpit, his bicep, and finally his forearm, which Tio latched onto. He did his best to secure a sweaty grip on Zio's jacket. They were 50 feet from the barrier around the finish point. Tio could make it 50 feet. With all his strength, he gathered momentum, swinging Zio back and forth, and then finally let go. Even with Zio flailing and adding drag to his descent, Nia tracked him and was exactly where she needed to be to catch him when he fell back to the platform. And, just like Tio hadn't dared to hope, she toppled backward, straight through the barrier past the finish point with Zio still in her grasp. Tio closed his eyes and took a deep breath. It had worked. His friends were safe. He could let go now. What? As Tio fell and the lights on his suit went out, he prayed his soul that it would be enough to keep Zio safe. And then everything went dark. What do you mean? You could let go? Just go up! The trial was over. Tio and the other competitors who had failed to complete it, Xochi, Otzi, Detsy, and Aristella, were brought back to the finish line for the rankings. Nearly half of the platform had been destroyed. Dioso Agua and Dioso Tormentoso had doused the logs that had caught fire, leaving scorched wood and small wisps of smoke. Although semi-Dioso stood around when the rankings board was presented, their godly parents standing behind them. For once, the presence of his mom did nothing to console Tio. There was no excited chattering this time. Nia went to Tio's side immediately, tugging him into a tight, one-armed hug, and even she was silent. Tio leaned against her, his whole body quaking. Tio stared up at him like he was still in shock over what had just transpired. Hushed murmurs from the crowd pressed against them. To the side, Aristella and Aurelio stood close together. It was like Aristella turned into an entirely different person. The anger and ferocity driving her minutes before were gone. Her face was ashen as she kept her unblinking gaze on the rankings board. Her hair was a tangled mess, her shoulders tight as she pressed her elbows into her sides. And then there was Aurelio. His jaw was clenched tight, coppery eyes wide as he clutched Aristella's hand with white knuckles. Tio could see the rapid rise and fall of his chest, his visible pulse as the tendons in his neck stood out. He He stood still as a statue, not once looking anywhere but forward. Teal felt like he was going to throw up and he couldn't stop shaking. He didn't want the rankings to go up. He didn't want to see them. Didn't matter who became Sunbearer, because one of them was about to be sentenced to death and another one was going to have to kill them. He hated himself for even thinking. Not Zio, because none of them deserved to have their lives end. What other choice was there? Without sacrificing someone's life to keep the Soul Stone fueled, the world would end and all the people of Reino del Sol would be doomed. How could Zio ever possibly decide whose life was worth sacrificing to save the rest of them? As Diosa Luna stepped forward, Teal held his breath. When she spoke, her voice was quiet and resigned. Souls determine the rankings. Teal glued his gaze to Zio's glyph at the very bottom, anxiously waiting as the other glyphs shifted positions, stone sliding against stone. He squeezed his hands into fists, his fingernails biting into his palms. Move, he pleaded in his head. Please move. His eyes stung from not blinking. Teal was ready to pass out when finally the J glyph of Dios Mil Suerte moved up from last to ninth. Yes! Nia cried out, grabbing an absolutely shocked Zio. Relief crashed into Teal so forcefully his knees buckled. He turned to his friends to celebrate, but suddenly the dais was filled with soul priests in their white robes. They converged around Aurelio and Aristella. Wait! Aurelio's weak, broken voice stepped into Teal's chest. Panicked, he spun to the rankings. Diosa Lumbre's fire glyph sat at the very bottom. Sharp panic and terror grabbed Teal by the throat. Aurelio? But no, it wasn't Aurelio's glyph. It was... Aristella stepped away from her brother with her head held high, allowing the priest to bring her forward to Phantasma. Aristella! Pain was audible in Aurelio's voice. He stepped forward, moving with his forehead, reaching for his sister, but Diosa Lumbre's hand shot out, gripping him by the shoulder. Aurelio winced but stopped, his fingers catching empty air. Stricken, Aurelio's chest heaved with shaky breaths. Teal's heart sank, because he'd saved Zio, Aristella had lost. The stance broke out into thunderous applause. It was disorienting. Why were they cheering? Didn't they see what was happening? This wasn't a celebration. It was a condemnation. Teal turned, searching for Nia, only to find himself suddenly surrounded by smiling priests. He stumbled back a step, bumping into his mom. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to run. Diosa Luna stepped toward him, a calm smile on her face. Teal instinctively leaned away. Congratulations, Teal, he said, but he didn't understand why. Finally, he looked at the top of the rankings board. I will say that having the ranking on the page, while also being told what the rankings are in the book, kind of gives it away. I will say. It's cool, but kind of gives it away. There was a sudden, familiar shift of weight on Teal's head. He reached up and the gold prongs of the Sunburst crown brushed against his fingertips. Sol had chosen him as the Sunbearer. It was like Teal didn't have control over his body anymore. The priest swept him forward and to stand next to Aristella, facing the crowd, which erupted in roaring cheers. Beside him, Aristella stood tall, staring straight ahead. Her face was wiped clear of emotions, but the delicate skin around her eyes was pinched. A tear slid down her cheek, leaving a trail on her soot-covered skin. Her amber eyes were hard and resolute, but below them, her jaw trembled. It didn't feel real. This wasn't right. None of this was what he wanted. This decade's Sunbearer trials are over, Luna announced to the crowd. I'm thrilled to present our honored sacrifice, Aristella, daughter of Lumbre, and Teal, son of Quetzal, our first Jade Sunbearer. With that, Phantasma gently led Aristella away, surrounded by a group of soul priests. Diosa Lumbre followed, not even sparing Aurelio a glance as she walked by, leaving him alone on the platform. Teal froze in place. Quetzal raced forward, encircling him in a tight embrace. Past her shoulder, Nia watched Teal with no trace of triumph on her face. At her side, Zio stared up at Teal's crown. You did it, Tio! His mom sang in his ear. And she was right. Chapter 24. The crowd was dispersing and it was time to head back to the Trajineras. Aurelio had broken away from the group first, storming back to the jungle and the wooden paths. Aurelio, wait! Tio tried to chase after him, the crown an awkward weight on his head. Aurelio didn't slow down. Every muscle in his back strained under his skin, tendons of his neck tightly corded. Tio ran forward, catching hold of his wrist, a golden armband hot to the touch. Aurelio! Aurelio violently wrenched himself free of Tio's grasp. Shouldn't have said the nickname. He spun to face him and jabbed his finger in Tio's face. Don't! Tio stumbled back a step. He never heard Aurelio's voice like that. Nia surged forward but Tio threw out his hand to stop her. Tried to swallow past the thickness in his throat. I'm sorry. She's all I have! Aurelio tried to hold on to his anger, but his watery eyes betrayed him. I told you! His voice broke. Tio saw his chin dimple for just a moment before Aurelio turned away, scrubbing his hands over his face. They drew in attention. The golds grouped together, watching anxiously and whispering to one another. Zio slipped between Nia and Tio. Tio could see the shift in Aurelio's face, anguish swallowed by wrath. I would have taken her place, Aurelio insisted through clenched teeth. The trials don't work like that, Tio said. You let her fall, knowing she would come in last, Aurelio accused, still not looking at him. He fell too, dumbass! What do you mean? Tio flinched, his heart aching. He wanted to defend himself, but he couldn't. There was no easy answer. Someone had to be the sacrifice. They all knew that, but there wasn't a choice. Without a sacrifice to refuel the Sunstones, the world would literally end. No matter what happened, someone had to be killed. Not necessarily. That was what Aurelio had been saying the entire time, only now he was forced to confront it. Aurelio's head was bowed as he walked away. This time, Tio led him. Also, I kind of knew this would happen. Not Aristella being the last one, but I knew Tio would win. And I knew that at some point that he would have to kill someone that he wouldn't. I have a feeling that he's going to have to kill Aristella, but he's not going to want to, and he's going to refuse to, and the Obsidians are going to come back. The steps of Sol Temple were lit by torches and full of semidioses and priests gathering for the Sunbearer ceremony. Separated from his friends, Tio felt like he was watching himself make the long walk to the top of the temple. He was completely untethered, surrounded by his sea people all smiling and congratulating him. He was led to Dios Luna's office below the observatory. To the naked eye, the planets of the astronomical clock already appeared to be in perfect alignment, with midnight only a handful of moments away. Tick tock, tick tock. Several priests swarmed, pulling out Tio's regalia on a rack and speaking excitedly to one another. A gold basin was brought out and filled with warm water and bright flowers. Tio let them strip him out of his uniform, not even self-conscious because his body didn't feel like his own. They methodically began the process of washing his skin with soft sponges until the mud and smell of burning wood was replaced by Nicotiana, honeysuckle, and marigold. As they worked, Tio stared at the murals painted along the walls, stopping at the final scene. Last time, Tio had been so distracted by the death in the mural where Sol lay dying, he didn't pay much attention to the final image. Sol shone in the sky above the people of Rayon del Sol as they lived their lives in peace, protected by the sun's rays. Sol had given their life to protect their people, just like every sacrifice thereafter. Something didn't sit quite right with Tio. It kept poking at the back of his brain. They used warm, fluffy towels to dry his skin in iridescent black curls. With numb fingers, Tio changed into fresh underclothes. When it was time to get dressed in his regalia, a familiar voice spoke behind him. I will take it from here. Humac walked forward slowly. His bright blue robe shone in the sea of white and gold. Tio exhaled a shuddering breath. What are you doing here? He asked, barely recognizing the dullness of his own voice. Humac clasped his hands in front of him, watching Tio carefully as he spoke. It's my honor and responsibility as the Sunbearer's priest to ready him for the ceremony. As the other priests filed out, Humac helped Tio to change into his regalia in silence. His limbs were impossibly heavy and difficult to move, but Humac was patient with him. The feather cap was suffocating when Humac draped it across his shoulders. Feather cape. When Tio was dressed, Humac circled him, making small adjustments. After they bring you up to the altar, Dios Luna will present both of you to Sol, Humac said, not looking Tio in the eye as he gently smoothed out the cape. When the lights of the sunstones go out, that's when you must perform the sacrifice. Tio swallowed past the rising bile in his throat but nodded. She'll be laid out on the table and you'll be presented with a ceremonial blade, Humac explained, like he wasn't walking Tio to the steps of murdering someone. Her heart is in the center of her chest, slightly to the left of her breastbone. Angle the fire of the blade so it can easily sit between her ribs, Humac continued. Oh, great, thanks! Push her weight into the handle. Firmly, Tio. Humac retrieved the sunburst crown. Release her quickly. Duh! Release her quickly. Aristella. Humac paused, the crown hovering above Tio's head. Finally, his eyes dropped to meet Tio's. Aristella, he repeated. Not her, Aristella. Humac's dark, tired eyes considered Tio for a moment. His features were smooth and expressionless. He gave Tio a smile that was little more than a grim twist of the mouth. Aristella, Humac agreed. Finally, he placed the crown on Tio's head. The cool gold bit into his scalp as Humac made the final adjustments. His hands came to rest on Tio's shoulder. I don't want this, Tio choked out. Humac's grip tightened. I'm so sorry, Tio, he said in a low tone, his head bowed so Tio couldn't see his face. The pain in his voice made Tio's chest ache. He threw himself forward, clutching Humac's ropes as tightly as he could, his whole body quaking. Humac started, letting out a small sound of surprise. After a moment's hesitation, he wrapped his arms around Tio. I want to go home, Tio choked out against the priest's chest. I want this all to be over. Soon, Humac said, trying to sound reassuring. But it wasn't true. First, he'd have to travel to all the other temples in Rayon del Sol to bring them new sunstones. And for that to happen, he'd have to end another human's life. How could the world continue normally after that? Also, I'm just gonna say, I've just stopped making this trying to just read it. At this point, it's just gonna be a commentary. I don't care. I want you guys to see how excited I get when I read books, and this is one of them. This is actually really good. I'm really enjoying this. When Humac led Tio up to the observatory, everyone was gathered around the Soul Stone, waiting. As Tio followed Humac through the crowd, he felt like he was underwater, moving in slow motion, every sound muffled in his ears. Heads turned to watch and they kept smiling, Sia flashing teeth and hungry eyes. When Humac presented Tio to Dios Luna, he almost latched into the priest's arm and begged him to stay. He had spent so much energy proving himself, trying to compete with the Golds, only to feel just as small and helpless as he had during the trials. Luna brought him forward where the rest of the competitors stood around the Soul Stone, waiting. They were all in their regalia once again, a strange echo of their first night at Soul Temple. Tio immediately sought out Aurelio. He stood rigid and still, his hands locked behind his back. He looked like he'd been through hell in the short time since they'd seen each other. His eyes were bloodshot and puffy, and his posture sagged like gravity itself were trying to crush him. "Come forward, Tio," Dios Luna said, with a warm smile. She motioned for him to stand at the foot of the sacrificial slab. Overhead, the Soul Stone slowly spun and glowed like it always did. This close, Tio could easily hear its quiet humming. In every direction, the beams of the sunstone shot into the sky, but even now as Tio watched, their lights were slowly fading. "I present our Sunbearer." Luna motioned for him to face the crowd, and when he did, they erupted into applause. It was sickening. Even Nia clapped, but she stood stick straight, eyes wide and lips pressed into a tight line. At her side, Zio watched Tio carefully, his brow furrowed in a calculating expression on his face. Aurelio refused to look at Tio, and Tio couldn't blame him. Seeing Aurelio like this was bad enough. Tio didn't want to see the look on Aurelio's face as if his glassy gaze landed on him. The back of Tio's throat burned. He didn't want to be here. He didn't want to do this. This wasn't right. There was movement from the crowd, quiet murmurs and shifting. Aristella approached the Soul Stone. Phantasma stood dutifully at her side, flanked by soul priests. She was in her fiery regalia, but this time she was covered in golden ornaments and ornaments of soul. Sunbursts hung from her ears, and chains draped across her shoulders and looped around her waist. As she walked with her head held high, gold bangles clinked together on her wrists and ankles. Her steps were steady and determined as she approached the Soul Stone. Shoulders back and chin lifted, she didn't look at all like a sacrifice being led to her execution. Instead, Aristella looked fearless and ethereal, every bit the gold hero she was raised to be. Tio felt like dirt beneath her feet. "Many years ago, Soul saved her people with the ultimate gift of their sacrifice," Dios Luna said. "Today we will honor their choice, renew their gift, and preserve the balance of this world. Soul chose 10 worthy competitors for this year's Sunbearer trials, and all of you played an important part in creating the future we step into today. Thank you for your brave and dominant spirits. We all thank Seme Dios Aristella for following a soul sacrifice." Cheese. Phantasma led Aristella to the sacrificial stone. The golden skulls it lay upon sparkled in the firelight. The table itself was covered in bright orange marigold petals that smelled like sweet apples. Aristella's adornments clinged together as she lay down. Phantasma kneeled next to her side and took Aristella's hand in both of hers. Luna brought Tio to stand beside her, like some kind of prince approaching a sleeping princess in a fucked-up fairy tale. Aristella closed her eyes, but not in a gentle way where Tio could maybe convince himself she was asleep. They were tightly squeezed shut, lips pressed between her teeth as her chin wobbled. Her arms were pressed against her sides, every muscle in her body taut as she waited for Tio to end her life. None of it felt real except for the heavy weight of the obsidian dagger Luna pressed into his grip. His hand shook. He tried to grasp it tighter. The last few moments before midnight ticked away. In the darkness surrounding the temple, the sunstones faded to golden threads. Tio's heart hammered in his throat, his breath shallow and sharp. He looked out, trying to find anyone who could reassure him, but no one met his gaze. Nia had lowered her head. Zio's eyes were on his wrist, where he clutched his bracelet in his hand. The only one still watching was Aurelio. While everyone else diverted their gaze, Aurelio refused to turn away. He looked out helplessly, the tight lines on his face betraying his anguish no matter how hard he tried to hide it as the Osa Lumbre towered behind him. The sunstones flickered out of existence, plunging the world into night and allowing the stars to blaze overhead. Slowly, the light of the soul stone began to fade. It was time. Aristella's heart needed to be pierced so her blood could replenish the soul stone before it went out. Sweat prickled on his brow as Tio gripped the obsidian blade in his hands, poised above Aristella's heart, just like Humac had told him. He had to do it. He couldn't put it off any longer. This was his responsibility. Silvery tears slipped from the corners of Aristella's eyes. But Tio didn't want to do this. Something had been terribly wrong about the final trial, the way Aristella had acted and looked. Something wasn't right. None of it was right. He didn't want to hurt Aurelio. He didn't want to kill anyone. He didn't want anyone, including Aristella, to have to die, and especially not by his hands. He couldn't. I mean, technically, if you let the obsidians free, people are going to die at your hands. But also not? I don't know. If you don't kill Aristella, the obsidians are going to get loose. So, people are going to possibly die. So that's also kind of your fault. But also, it is also your fault if Aristella dies because you are fucking gonna kill her. So, confusing. Now, Tia, Luna said, quiet but firm. He wouldn't. I won't do it. The words flew out of his mouth, surprising Tia just as much as the people surrounding him. For a moment, there was silence whilst no one moved and the soul stone continued to dim. Tia lowered his head from over Aristella's chest. Everyone jumped into action. Get the dagger, Tio's Luna cried out. The soul priest leapt into action, converging on Tio. He yanked the dagger from their desperate hands. His wings shot out, shoving a wave of them back. Aristella! Aurelio shouted to his sister, who stared up at Tio, too stunned to move. Tio! Came a voice beside him. Zio had snuck up around the priest somehow and was reaching up toward Tio's hand. Oh! Give me the dagger! Another sea of priests swarmed forward. Zio flexed his hands, waiting. Tio could fight off the priest. Maybe Zio could take the dagger and run. Tio passed the dagger to the younger boy. Above him, the last embers of light faded from deep within the soul stone, revealing the golden skull hidden inside. Suddenly, Zio changed. I'm sorry, what? What had been an expression of desperation and fear morphed into something dark. For the first time since they'd met, Tio could see a resemblance between Zio and Malasuerte. Zio? Tio asked. Even the priest assembled to a stop, watching the two semideoses in confusion. It's too late, Zio said, clutching the obsidian dagger protectively against his chest. The stone went out. He said it like he was relieved. Shuddering exhale rolled through Zio. His black eyes slid at Tio. Soul can't help you now. I'm confused. Zio raised the dagger to his opposite palm. As the blade pulled away, a trail of obsidian black blood dripped to the ground. Behind Tio, the priest gasped. For a moment, he forgot how to breathe. Head tipped back, Zio stared up into the sky. They're coming. The world plunged in the darkness. Okay. I don't know why, but, like, there was a tiny part of me that was like, what if Zio's behind this? I don't know why I thought that, but I did. And it is the case. What the fuck? What? I didn't... Huh? Why? What? What? Huh? Like... I don't... Okay. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of, like, the moments beforehand, and it's like... I don't know. Chapter 25. The ground shook, sending Tio sprawling onto his side. The sunburst crown skidded out of reach. Terror and pandemonium rippled through the onlookers. Suddenly, everything was illuminated with silvery light. Overhead, the stars turned blazing bright. At first, Tio thought they were growing bigger, but then he realized they were getting closer. I mean, that means that they're getting bigger, but okay. Stars rained down all around them. Their gorgeous celestial bodies painted Reino del Sol in brilliant explosions of light. They crashed into the ancient buildings surrounding Sol Temple and dove into the waters of the canals. Stone groaned and shifted, knocking people off their feet. Cracks and fissures opened up, dislodging huge chunks of the temple. Sol's glyph teetered, large golden slab tipping toward the sacrificial table where Aristella still lay. You didn't think that, I don't know, stand up, girl? Tio struggled to his feet and ran forward, grabbing Aristella and dragging her to the floor. The huge stone glyph fell onto the stone slab, cracking the table in half. What had Tio done? What had Tio done? The right thing? Priest ran for cover while Semidiosis raced to help. Leave now! Diosa Luna shouted as the confused crowd turned to a sea of panic. She tried to move, but her legs gave out. Face straining, she dropped to her knees. Before they get here! But it was too late. An inky blackness filled with glittering stars spilled from the night sky, pouring into the temple. 3 towering figures rose from the ether, cloaked in black. A woman with the wolfish head of a chupacabra, a tall and slender being with midnight blue skin, a smooth, featureless face, and a man with a white goat's head, horizontal pupils, and a yellow smile. That's terrifying. Zio stood in the middle of it all. Gone was the fear and apprehension Tio was so used to seeing on Zio's face. Now he looked relieved and triumphant. My, how How time flies when you've been locked away for a few millennia, Venganza said as he stretched his talon, knobby hand over his head. His gold eyes cut down to look at Zio. Good job, my boy. You're gonna fucking tell me that Zio is the son of him? Of Venganza? But what about Mala Suerte? What? Tio stood in a breath. My boy? Several things clicked into place at once. Zio's lacking any powers from Mala Suerte, how he kept failing in the trials, his black blood dripping from the cut on his palm. How he kept failing in the trials? I mean, I guess. But that's also him being little. Like, he's 13. I'm going to have to look into this when I do the video. Okay. Zio wasn't a jade at all. He was an obsidian. And look, they threw a welcome party for us, Chupacabra said, her black lips peeling gleefully from her sharp teeth as people ran for cover. So many half-gods for us to take under our wings as well, Venganza added, his gaze drinking in the competitors. You're the ones so deemed worthy, are you? So she dragged Ozzy behind her. Marino stopped signing as he and Desi gripped one another. Nia bared her teeth even though Tio could see the fear in her eyes. Venganza chuckled. How perfectly poetic. You won't touch them, Diose Guerrero roared. They raced forward, two large blades peering each of their hands. Calm down, kitty cat, Chupacabra said with a roll of her eyes. With a flick of their wrist, Chaos knocked Guerrero back with a ball of black ether. Walls like black fire encircled the semi-Dioses, blocking the Dios from reaching them. And where is the boy who made all this possible? Venganza asked, eyes sweeping the crowd. Tio couldn't move or speak, but he didn't need to. Venganza's smile widened unnaturally. There he is! He bent down to get a better look at Tio. How are they really tall? Tio tried to scramble away, but he couldn't get his body to work. Venganza loomed over him, so large he could swallow Tio whole. Venganza smiled wildly as he peered down at Tio. We owe you thanks, son of Quetzal. Thought my son would fail us, but you handed him the solution. He laughed delightedly. Tio looked to Zio, searching for some sort of answer or explanation, anything to dispute what Venganza was saying. But Zio's dark curls fell across his eyes. He wouldn't even look at Tio. Stay away from him, Diosa Luna spat as she struggled to get to her feet. You banished us and stripped us of our cities and titles, Venganza explained, so calm as the sky continued to rain down around them. Our families were taken from us, so it's only fair that we take your most prized semi-dioses. Without so, you have no power over us, Diosa. With fierce determination, Diosa Luna followed her, pulled herself to her feet, and tried to step forward, only to collapse back to her knees once more. Silver in her hair had faded to an ashy gray. Is her power fading? Is she fading? Oh dear, you don't look so good, Luna, Chupacabra said, salivating. Remind me, Chupacabra, how does the moon live without the sun? Venganza asked. He reached forward and plucked the soul stone from the ground. The light was quickly fading, the tiny sun flare shrinking. Usually too bright to look at, now Tio could see Soul's golden skull under the glass surface. Oh, that's what the soul is for! The skull on the front. That's Soul's skull! Oh, okay. Diosa Luna's hand shot out. Don't! Chupacabra threw her head back and howled with glee. Also, is her life force connected to the stone? That's what I'm getting at. Oh, that's right, Venganza purred, his eyes sliding into Diosa Luna. She doesn't. The light of the soul stone was finally eclipsed in black, the hot orange glow of the sun burning through the skull's eye sockets for a moment before dying completely. Diosa Luna's eyes flew open. A small gasp burst past her lips. Luna's calm had collapsed into shock, fear, and at the edges, rage. No! Tiosa cried out, lunging for her. Tio's hand grasped hers, but it was cold and strange. Tio looked into Diosa Luna's glimmering eyes just as she disappeared into a burst of stars. Okay, she just fucking died. Above them, chaos cackled into the night, the gales of their laughter turning to wind that scattered the silvery dust swirling around Tio. Chupacabra yawned. Should we head home then, Venganza? Venganza nodded and turned to Chaos. If you wouldn't mind, Chaos, he asked politely. As Chaos twisted their hands, a rift opened on the temple floor. Teleporting? And don't forget the kids, Venganza added with a dismissive flick of her wrist before he and Chupacabra sank into the ether. Thick dark matter swirled dizzying lights like a nebula, sucking in stones and marigold petals around it. A lurching, magnetic tug inched its way up Tio's body, swallowing and dropping his ankles. Oh no! He's getting swallowed in. Are all of them gonna be sucked in? Shouts filled the air. Tio latched onto a large chunk of solid stone among all the debris as the rift threatened to pull him in. He watched in horror as the cellar fell into the darkness. Oh, yup. Zochi held onto Ozzy, but with nothing to cling to each other except each other. cling to except each other, they were both swallowed up. Tio! He turned to see Nia getting dragged toward the abyss. A shout tore through Tio's throat. There was no time to think. He threw himself forward, using his wings to fight against the pole. He grabbed Nia around their waist and had only a second of reprieve before they were both poured toward the rift. The sound of steel striking stone cut through Tio's ears. Nia had conjured up 2 large spikes and sunk them into the stone floor, anchoring them. Her biceps bulged and her face contorted with pain as she held on as tightly as she could. More bodies slid past them. First Desi, whose hands scrambled forward scrambled for something to hold on to, but slid uselessly across the floor. Tio saw his terrified face before he was devoured by the darkness. Another body came sliding this way. It was Zio, eyebrows raised in surprise as the floor disappeared beneath him. Tio didn't think. He thrust out his arm, catching Zio by the sleeve before he fell into the pit. Ah! Neo cried, straining to support all their weight while dangling from her spikes. Tio wasn't sure how long they'd last. Zio was squirming in his grip, trying to break free. Stop! Tio cried. Whatever was going on, Zio was clearly involved, but Tio had sworn to protect Zio during the trials, and now those same instincts took over. Just stay still! Neo will get us out! Don't you get it? Zio shouted. I don't need your help. I don't want you to save me. I'm an Basidian, and this is our revenge. I don't think you believe that. I think you're going to help them in the next book. Ha ha! With a final wrench, Zio slammed his small fist into Tio's chest, breaking free from him falling into the dark. Above them, Neo cried out in dismay. Tio's head filled with static, unable to make sense of what had just happened. Relio! Aristella screamed. Tio looked down to find Aurelio and Aristella trapped a mere 10 feet from the rift. Aristella dangled from Aurelio's forearm as he desperately held onto the broken sacrificial table with the other. Sweat covered his skin, the tendons straining as they pulled the vortex toward his grip. Aurelio's face was contorted as he tried to hang on, but Aristella's grip was inching down his arm. He couldn't hold on much longer. He needed help. Tio rolled onto his side and quickly tried to gauge how far away Aurelio was. If he timed it right, he could get to him. Nia must have realized what he was thinking. Tio, don't! He let go. Tio angled his wings and, with the pull of the rift, slid diagonally across the floor. His stomach slammed at the slab of the rock Aurelio hung from, knocking the wind out of him. Ugh. Sorry. His body curled around the stone, crushing his chest but keeping him from getting sucked into the abyss. Aurelio was barely holding on. His fingers dug into a crack in the stone, gold blood trickling down his hand. Tio tried to grab Aurelio's hand, but it was just out of reach. Aurelio! With a jerk, Aurelio looked up. Shock and confusion flashed through the pain on his face. I'm slipping! Aristella cried out. Aristella looked down. Aurelio looked down. Aristella's hand slid down her brother's arm, but he latched onto her wrist. Below her, the rift slowly started to shrink. They just needed to hang on a little while longer. Aurelio's attention was fully on his sister. His arm shook. His grip on the stone started to slip. Don't let go! He shouted, but she continued to slip until they only held on to each other by their fingertips. Tio, grab into her, maybe? Under them, more cracks formed in the stone table. Couldn't hold all 3 of them much longer. Tio knew it, Aurelio knew it, and so did Aristella. Tio pressed his thighs against the stone, trying to get more leverage to stretch farther. The rift continued to close. He only needed a couple more inches, but Aristella didn't allow it. Her eyes flicked at Tio. Find us! She shouted over the noise's panicked cries. I'm sorry, what? Aurelio shook his head fiercely, refusing to let go. A section of the stone fell away. Tio dug deep and held on, every fiber of his muscle screaming. Aristella ignited a fire in her hand. Aurelio cried out in pain. He tried to hold on, to fight through it, but it was too much for him to handle. Aristella slipped through his fingers. Are you kidding me, girl? No! Aurelio let go of the stone and dove after her sister. Tio lurched forward and snatched Aurelio's hand, locking his grip around the other boy's waist. Aristella fell. She sucked in her breath, eyes wide and terrified, before she disappeared through the rift. Stella! Aurelio's voice rushed out toward through his throat. Let me go! He tried to wrench himself free, but Tio refused to let go. He squeezed his eyes shut and pressed his forehead against the stone slab. The muscles in his shoulders screamed as Aurelio thrashed, but still he hung on. Slowly the rift closed, plunging the world into stillness and night. Tio and Aurelio slumped onto the ground. When Tio released his hand, Aurelio didn't move. His chest rose and fell with shuddering breaths, staring where his sister and the others had disappeared. Where was Nia? Tio staggered to his feet and scanned the crowd. People darted back and forth with panicked voices. Huge chunks of the stone floor had been damaged or dislodged. Tio! In a flash of feathers and gold, Tio's mother found him and pulled him into a crushing embrace. Thanks so you're all right, she gasped as she ran her fingers through her hair, down her arms and across his chest. I'm all right, he heard himself tell her. Where's Nia? Tio asked, trying to look around his mother's huge wings. Why would you... That's my question. Why wouldn't you help Nia? Like, I feel like multiple times in this book, he really kind of just, like, focuses a lot more on Aurelio. And, like, yes, he does help his friends and stuff, and I know, like, you can really feel that he does care about his friends. But in this instance, it's like, why wouldn't you help Aurelio? Maybe in this instance he thought that Nia could handle herself, so he's like, oh, I gotta go help him. Apparently Nia couldn't, I guess. He found her kneeling on the floor, cordoned on herself as Dio's tiara tried pushing the hair that come loose from her braids out of her face. Okay, she is okay. Okay. Read ahead before you come to conclusions. Tio dug over, panic climbing his throat. Nia, are you okay? When she looked up, her nose and eyes were bright red, her chin dimpled. What's wrong? He looked over and didn't see any cuts or gold blood, but the pain written across her face looked excruciating. Her face was pinched and streaked with fresh tears. Her hands were upturned on her lap, palms red and raw. They're gone, she choked. We couldn't save them. She looked up at Tio with eyes full of anguish he'd never seen before. I wasn't strong enough. Nia's face crumpled. Tiara pulled her tight to her chest. Is that her saying she wasn't strong, or him saying that he wasn't strong? Chapter 26. Tio tentatively approached Aurelio where he remained on the floor. Aurelio? I don't want to hear it, he growled, pushing himself onto his knees. He found the obsidian sacrificial dagger and held it in his palm. I'm sorry, Tio tried. You're sorry? Aurelio said, finally looking at him. I did this, he stammered, barely able to wrap his mind around how thoroughly he had fucked up this time. If I had just killed her instead? Aurelio gulped down air like he'd been punched in the chest. No, you couldn't kill her. Should have known you couldn't. You're just too... He shook his head. You did what you thought was right, Aurelio managed. I'm the one who left her behind. She sacrificed herself. She's the one that was like, you know what? I'm gonna go into the portal. She could have held on, but she didn't anymore. Like, come on, girl. Like, what did she mean by find us? It's just like did she think that she couldn't hold on anymore? And she's like, you know what? Like, she had to burn Aurelio to let him to let go. He had you. If you just waited a little longer. For a long moment, Aurelio didn't say anything. He just sat on his knees, his arms wrapped around himself. His fingers were white from how hard they were pressing into his ribs, like he was holding himself together. Tio stopped thinking and moved on instinct. He wrapped his arms around Aurelio and hugged him with everything he had. He wouldn't let Aurelio hold this alone. It wasn't about fault or blame. It wasn't about the trials or the apocalypse. All that mattered right now was Aurelio's pain. Aurelio's bottle went limp under the embrace. His arms wrapped around Tio, fists curling into feathers. Aww, I honestly thought he would push him back. What happened next was a blur. My fault. It's all my fault. Nia was on high alert, her entire body at attention and their parents close behind. Tio realized they were still together because she had made it so, refusing to let the bustling crowd tear them apart. He wished he had enough left in him to feel good about that. The gods gathered around Dio's Lumbre, who stood with their arms crossed, emanating barely contained rage. The observatory was full of more people than Tio could keep track of. Distantly, he realized Tumek must be among them, but he was too ashamed to seek him out. Settle down, Lumbre said, her voice low as her molten eyes scanned the crowd. When they didn't give her the desired effect, she tried again. Settle down! That time, the room obeyed. We need a plan, the Diosa declared, voice flat. If she had any ideas, she wasn't letting on. We need to know what happened, another voice cut in. On some level, Tio recognized it. Maze, maybe. On Tio's other side, Aurelio radiated heat. Tio had never been more aware of the space between him and another person, but now those engines were screaming all the words Aurelio had said. Here's the question. Zio was like, give me the blade. And I think he cut his hand or something. I'm pretty sure that him taking the blade and cutting his hand was not what started it. It was Tio not killing Aristella, right? So what's the point of Zio being a kid of obsidian? And also, wouldn't Sol know that Zio was a kid of obsidian? And wouldn't have picked him? Maybe it is the case, I have been thinking about this for a bit, maybe it's the case that he picked, Sol knows that, he picked Zio because he knew he was an obsidian, because he was like, we need to make the world a better place, so we need to let the obsidians be released, so that way they can be banished forever, and that we don't have to have these sacrifices anymore? Maybe? I don't know. Tio had never been more aware of the space between him and another person, but now those engines were screaming all the words Aurelio hadn't said. Why did you stop me? She's my sister. You should have let me go. We need to get to the bottom of this, Lumbre added. Half the eyes in the room shot to Tio. The other half glanced around, probably seeking out Mala Suerte, but he was nowhere to be seen. Nia's arm pressed closer to Tio's. He didn't feel particularly worthy of her protection, though, not when the others were gone. Here's my question. How did Mala Suerte think that Zio was his son when he was the son of one of the Obsidians? Is he a part of it? Because that's suspicious. The room broke out into low murmurs again, and Aurelio took the opportunity to step forward. Diosa Lumbre cut him a stern look, and he stopped. Without the soul stone, the world will remain in perpetual night, Lumbre said, and all murmuring ceased. The Obsidian Diosis will continue to gain power until they are strong enough to destroy our world, and us along with it. Well then, let's go get them. For a moment, the silence stretched on. Then it shattered. Everyone shouted all at once, some gods arguing over the best way to move forward, others already trying to leave for home to protect their people. What happened? Where's Mala Suerte? Did you see the boy's blood? It was black. Why did the Sunbearer finish the sacrifice? Was this the Jade's plan all along? Oh, fuck off! To this side, Tierra stood with his head bowed, the Sunbearer crown held in his gloved hands. Hope was not yet lost. Silence enveloped the room at the sound of the raspy, unfamiliar voice of the Earth God. Poppy? Nia asked, incredulous. There may be a way to undo what has been done, Tierra continued. His voice was low and grating, like rot scratching against rock. Only Soul has the power to banish the Obsidians, Diosa Lumbre cut in, clearly annoyed by the dramatic interruption. But Soul is dead. Not dead, Tierra corrected. Just gone from this world. It is up to us to bring them back. Bring back Soul? Quetzal echoed. Murmurs broke out once more again among the crowd. I dispersed Soul's mortal remains in the form of sunstones, Tierra explained. They cannot return to Reina del Sol in many pieces. But if we were to put them back together again, then Soul could come back, Nia exclaimed, clapping her hands together in excitement. Wait, what? I dispersed Soul's mortal remains in the form of sunstones. So if we get the sunstones, then we're good? You want to remove the sunstones from our temples? Lumbre snarled disapprovingly. The Obsidians have already been freed, Aurelio said, stepping forward. Without being refueled, the sunstones won't protect our city much longer. Lumbre shook her head. We do not have time for Tierra's half-thought-out schemes. Soul cannot help us now. We must protect ourselves. Guerrero, she said, turning to the jaguar-headed god, who growled in agreement. I hope these last centuries of peace have not made you soft. As of today, Reino del Sol is at war. I will go after the Obsidians, Aurelio declared. Lumbre shook her head, eyes cast down, like even now she was somewhat disappointed. No. Yes, Aurelio pressed, loud enough to quiet the room. Now instead of arguing with one another, all eyes were turned on parent and child, Diosa and Semidios. I will go after the Obsidians and I will rescue the stolen Semidiosis. A low hum of support traveled through the crowd. This was Aurelio after all, their golden boy. I will not send a child after gods, Lumbre spat. Tio's mind snapped on her choice of words. A child, not my child. For a goddess of fire, Lumbre was as cold as ice. The Diosis must remain here and protect the cities, Aurelio said. I'm the only logical choice. And Tio. And Nia, because they're the only ones left. The Obsidians weren't the only ones banished to the stars, boy, Lumbre hissed. The celestial monsters were locked up with their masters. Without Soul, they've been set free to wreak havoc and destruction on our world. You couldn't possibly fathom the horrors that have been unleashed. Also, So, clearly his mortal remains are in the Sunstones, so, like, other bones and shit are in the Sunstones, and his skull was in the main one. So, how is Soul not here? Is it because it was his skull that was alive? But if he still has parts of him in the Sunstones, how is he not alive? Tio's stomach gave a sick lurch. He learned about the Celestials in school, deadly monsters the Diosis had trapped in the cosmos as constellations. He remembered all the falling stars he'd seen crash back to the Earth. Without Soul, they had been set free as well. I can do it, Aurelio insisted as he attempted to stand tall. Diosa Lumbre let out a sharp, ugly laugh. You will die. Then I will die protecting our people. Tio reached out for Aurelio's arm. Aurelio didn't even blink. I'm going. No one in this room can stop me. That time, Lumbre did not argue. Instead, she regarded Aurelio with cold detachment. Then you will die a useless death. Fuck you! The crowd's arguing started up again, and Lumbre struggled to regain control. Tio watched Aurelio's expression tighten with resolve. He had no regard for himself or his safety. Brave, foolish Aurelio, who had set himself on fire to keep others warm. Tio swallowed his fear. If Aurelio was risking his life to save their friends, then Tio would go too. But before he could voice his decision, his mother's hand clamped down hard on his shoulder. Come with me, she whispered, gesturing for Aurelio to follow as well. Quetzal led them to the crowd and down the steps to Diosa Luna's office. When Tio blinked, he could still see Luna's burst of stars spotted behind his eyes. There, then gone. Zio did this. He betrayed us. And I honestly don't know why. And I don't feel like this was necessary. Amid all the arguing, some of the guts snuck off to reconvene. Tierra and Phantasma stood at the center of the circle with Nia at their side. Dude, Nia said, spotting Aurelio, your mom sucks. You can say that again. Tio silently agreed, but decided to keep that thought to himself. But it's okay, Nia continued, because my dad and Phantasma totally have a plan. The Obsidian's breaking free was always a risk, Tierra said. Tio couldn't even imagine ever getting used to the sound of that voice. Tio's eyes drifted across the office, landing once more on the murals along the walls. His focus shifted from the scene of still sacrifice to the image right beside it. The sun glowed from the sky above the rejoicing people of Reino del Sol. Sol had sacrificed themselves to keep them all safe. What had Tio done? What had Tio done? Lumabel convinced most of the goals to focus on preparing for war. It's up to us to bring back Sol, Pandolce explained. She tapped her fingers against Luna's desk and the map carved into its surface. The refueling of the sunstones does not happen immediately once the sacrifice is complete, Tierra said. Normally it takes a fortnight to finish the ritual and replenish every stone. Nia leaned in to whisper in Tio's ear. What's a fortnight? I don't fucking know, he whispered back. It's 2 weeks, Aurelio said. We must complete the formation of Sol before the fortnight ends, Tierra continued. In order to reach all the sunstones in time, we'll have to split up. One group to the north, another to the south, east, and west. So, you do the sacrifice to get the refueling potion or whatever the fuck, but it still takes you 2 weeks to refuel all the sunstones. So that means every 10 years, the sunstone somewhat does die, and so the Obsidians have a chance to come back, but because the sunstones get replenished, they're like they're like freed for like a few seconds and then they're trapped again. Is that what you're saying? I think he destroyed the stone is what made it like. But even then he hadn't destroyed it. It just went like. But even then it's like, oh, so how haven't the Obsidians returned by now? Because Tio hadn't done the sacrifice, but he needs to refuel all the other sunstones with the potion thingy. And so he didn't. So that just means that they returned? How haven't they returned by now if it takes 2 weeks to refuel all the sunstones? Does he refuel the main sunstone beforehand, like right after the sacrifice? And then he would have to do it, he would have to go to all the other sunstones and do it? And so it like keeps them back for longer? But since he didn't do it, they came back? But, okay. And someone must go to Los Restos to retrieve the Soul Stone, Quetzal added gravely. Now the Obsidians are back, they'll be able to sense our presence if we get anywhere near their temples. To retrieve the Soul... I thought he crushed the Soul Stone. Our presence, Opsion emphasized, gazed out on Tio and Aurelio and Nia, but not Semidiosis. Quetzal's brows shut up. You can't mean... I already said I would go after the Obsidians and free my sister and the others, Aurelio agreed. I can retrieve the Soul Stone too. We can retrieve the Soul Stone, Tio corrected. I'm going with you. Nia and Quetzal looked over at Tio, both of their expressions asking the same question. Are you sure about this? Tio's heart swelled. These two women would defend him to the ends of the earth. He nodded once. Nia cracked her knuckles. I'm going then too. The Celestials are back. The sun has failed and the moon is dead. This is the apocalypse, not a field trip. Dios Tormentoso warned with a rumble. Tio had noticed a few golds interspersed among the crowd, but there were more in Agua and Tormentoso, all parents who shouldn't have been taken. They'll need all the help they can get, Diosa Moore said, stepping forward. Moore held out her hand and a small vial filled with metallic red liquid swirled inside. An elixir of charming, he said, handing it out for Aurelio. Drink this and it will grant you the power of sooth-speak for 10 minutes. You can use it on humans and animals. A strong enough dose will even work on a god. Thank you, Aurelio said, taking the small bottle. If they needed to take their way out of something, Aurelio was the last person Tio would put in charge, but also meant he was the one out of the three of them who most needed the elixir. Take this, as well, Diosa Agua said, her voice as soft as water tumbling over a rock. She summoned a crystal bottle full of clear liquid as she approached Aurelio. It's a decanter of endless water. When Aurelio's face pinched, Agua chuckled and added, even a boy of fire needs fresh water to survive. And this, Tormentoso added, producing a white drawstring bag about the size of Aurelio's fist, my bag of winds. Nia snorted, one hand shooting up to cover her mouth. Tio tried to cut her look to say, be serious, but as soon as he made eye contact, a laugh bucked in his chest. Aurelio fed them an annoyed glance, but Tio could have sworn he caught an amused grin under Tormentoso's cloudy beard. Tiara stepped forward next. He pulled off one of his gloves, revealing a sinewy scarlet-red hand and a gray metal bracelet across his wrist. When he touched it, it turned into a ball, which he held out for his daughter to take. "Puppy!" Nia gasped. "Your unbreakable blade?" Tiara nodded. A massive, lethal-looking, nearly black blade sprung to life in her hand. "This is the only unbreakable metal in the world!" Nia explained as she gingerly brushed her fingers along the flat side of the short sword. "It can only be forged in the fires of Lucumbre, and only a child of Tiara can transform it." Nia jutted out her bottom lip as she looked up at her dad. "Thank you!" She threw herself at him, squeezing him in a tight hug. Tiara affectionately leaned his cheek against the top of her head, running his fingers over her braid with his ungloved hand. "Take this as well," Diosa Primavera insisted, pushing a brilliant green stone into her hand. "It's a gem of regeneration. Drop it into water and use it to douse a wound or drink to heal." "Oh, hell yes," Nia said, holding her gifts from the gods. "I can straight down at somebody with this and then bring them back to life." "Doesn't work that well," a very startled Primavera rushed to add. Then it was just Teal. The gods exchanged looks, unsure what to do with them. "You have me," his mother said. With a quick tug, she pulled one of her brilliant blue-green feathers from her hair and laid it in Teal's palm. "Always," Quetzal added with a reassuring smile. When you've gotten the soul stone, use this to summon us, and we'll arrive with the sunstones to perform the ritual and resurrect Soul." It was that easy? You could have just done that to resurrect him and to, I don't know, have him back while still having the obsidians trapped? I don't know. Teal took the feather and ran his fingers along the edge. In the dim light, the bright green feather sparkled with flashes of blue and gold. He wasn't alone. He had Nia and Aurelio at his side, and Mom and all the Diosas at his back. He could fix this. They would fix this. There was a shuffling of bodies and suddenly Phantasma appeared, pushing Wraith the group. She walked right up to Teal and pulled something from the sleeve of her dress. It was a plain taper candle that was already halfway burned through. Phantasma delicately placed it in Teal's hand with the other gift. "Thanks, Phantasma," he said with a weak smile. She beamed up at him proudly. Compared to Aurelio and Nia's gift, Teal's feather and used candles looked incredibly unimpressive, but he pretended to be excited anyway. The gods dissolved into urgent chatter, filing out of Luna's office as they strategized the best ways to protect their home cities and gather all the sunstones. The trio stopped when they reached the door to Luna's office. Sitting there expectantly were Lumbre and Guerrero, disapproving looks on their faces. "The gods are splitting into factions," Guerrero observed. "Horrible strategy in a time of war. "And you," Lumbre said, eyes only for her son. "You're siding with the Jades on this?" Technically, there's a gold here. There's only one Jade. But, okay. Aurelio nodded. "Then here," the Diosa said, a circlet seemingly made of burning coals appearing in her hands. "A scorching circlet," she said as Aurelio reluctantly took it. "When worn, it will amplify your fire powers," Lumbre told him. Aurelio nodded as he turned it over in his hands. Of course, the Diosa couldn't leave it at that. "It might make you almost as powerful as your sister." "You're such a bitch." Aurelio winced. "What a dick," Tio said, because he couldn't help himself. "Oh, right in front of her. Fuck yeah." Nia snorted. Lumbre's blistering eyes burned into him, but Tio just scowled back. "Have my ring of shielding," Diosa Guerrero said as they slipped a gold band from their middle finger and handed it to Nia. "All you have to do is throw up your hand and it will summon my shield." Nia gave it a try. She momentarily stumbled under the weight as a heavy shield materialized on her arm, covered in leather with Guerrero's strolling head branded on the front. "Oh my gods," Nia breathed, pulling up the unbreakable blade so she stood there with sword and shield. "It's totally over for those bitches!" Lumbre looked unimpressed, but Guerrero chuckled approvingly. "Wait, why are you even helping us?" Nia asked bluntly. With a flick of her wrist, the shiny weapons returned to their mundane forms. "Our parents are going against your orders." Guerrero and Lumbre exchanged a look. Guerrero replied, "We too want our children home." With that, the two golds turned on their heels and stalked away, mixing back into the crowd of golds and priests scrambling about. "So, what's the plan?" Nia asked, now that they were alone. "Try to undo the apocalypse, I guess." Tio shrugged. Aurelio let out a mirthless laugh. "You make it sound so easy." Tio bumped him with his shoulder. "You have to admit, an end-of-the-world road trip does sound kind of fun." Aurelio grinned. It was a tired grin, but a grin nonetheless. "Shit," Nia heaved a heavy sigh. "We're gonna need a bigger bag of candy." Now, that's a way to end a book, I guess.